You felt it shifting. Something changed, not around you, inside you. You are not the same seeker you used to be. You are not wandering anymore. You are not starving for scraps of revelation. And that realization has both excited you and unsettled you. Because when growth is real, it feels lonely at first. You used to search constantly. Another video, another teacher, another confirmation. You were hungry, desperate for clarity, desperate for language to explain what you felt since childhood. Have you noticed that urgency has quieted? Not because you stopped caring, but because something locked into place. You are not ordinary, you never have been. And the enemy knew that before you did. That is why your path was confusing. That is why your awakening felt chaotic. Warfare followed your curiosity because your curiosity was dangerous. Listen carefully. There are 9 signs you have transitioned from a spiritual seeker to a divine powerhouse. Not someone exploring light, someone carrying it. Not someone asking for authority, someone embodying it. And if this resonates, you already know this message was meant to find you. So stand firm, subscribe, anchor yourself here. Because what is unfolding in you is not casual growth. It is activation. First, you no longer chase truth. Truth responds to you. You remember the season when you ran everywhere looking for answers. You devoured teachings. You searched for mentors. You questioned everything. You felt behind, like everyone else knew something you didn't. That hunger was real, but it was training. You were sharpening discernment. You were building spiritual muscle. And the isolation you felt while searching, that was preparation. Because the chosen are not spoon-fed revelation. They wrestle for it. Now something is different. Insights come in silence, not from noise, not from endless consumption. You sit alone and suddenly understanding unfolds. You open a book and the exact line you need rises off the page. You walk into a situation and you just know. Have you noticed that truth doesn't feel distant anymore? It moves toward you. This is not coincidence. This is authority forming. When you stop chasing external validation, internal alignment activates. You stopped running from voice to voice because your own voice grew strong. You stopped seeking light outside because light ignited within. The world still searches, but you stand. And that shift confused some people. They liked you when you were uncertain. They were comfortable when you were questioning yourself. But when your energy stabilized, when your presence became grounded, something changed in the atmosphere. Warfare increased. Why? Because darkness is threatened by stability. The enemy prefers you distracted endlessly, consuming, never anchoring. But now you are anchored. Now your spirit is steady. Now your discernment is sharp. You are not impressed by spiritual performance anymore. You are not easily manipulated by emotional hype. You feel truth. You recognize distortion, and you don't need applause to confirm it. That is power. You are no longer searching for light. You are emitting it. And when light emits, shadows shift. This is the transition from seeker to source. Stand in it, because if this is your first sign, the second will shake you even deeper. Second sign, spiritual noise now exhausts you instead of impressing you. You feel it immediately. The loud voices, the dramatic displays, the exaggerated language of power. It used to pull you in. Now it drains you. Have you noticed that you can sit in a room full of hype and feel nothing but heaviness? You can scroll past what others call anointed and feel your spirit withdraw. Not because you are critical, not because you are cold, but because you have matured. There was a time when spectacle felt like substance, when volume felt like authority, when emotion felt like evidence of presence, and you were not wrong for being there. You were learning, you were awakening, but now you discern instantly. You can feel the difference between performance and presence in seconds. One is loud but hollow, the other is quiet but weighty. One feeds ego, the other strengthens spirit, and your body reacts before your mind does. Exhaustion hits when something is artificial. Rest settles when something is real. This is not preference. This is refinement. The world chases noise. The chosen seek depth. The world is entertained by chaos. The chosen are anchored in clarity. The world confuses emotionalism with anointing. You know the difference, and that difference isolates you. People may call you too serious, too intense, too discerning. But what they call intensity is actually alignment. You are no longer impressed by flashing lights in the dark. You are aligned with steady fire. And steady fire does not flicker for attention. Listen carefully. Darkness thrives in distraction. The enemy does not always attack you with fear. Sometimes he floods you with noise. Constant voices, constant opinions, constant stimulation. Because a distracted powerhouse is less dangerous than a focused one. But now chaos irritates you. Why? Because you sense assignment. You feel destiny pressing on your time. You feel purpose guarding your energy. You no longer have the luxury to entertain confusion. You are becoming too powerful for that. That exhaustion you feel in loud spiritual environments, that is not weakness. That is your spirit rejecting dilution. That is your anointing refusing to be manipulated by theatrics. You prefer depth over spectacle. You prefer silence over shouting. You prefer presence over performance. And that preference marks you. Not everyone will understand this shift. Some will think you lost your fire, but in truth your fire became controlled, focused, strategic. Wild flames attract attention. Controlled fire changes landscapes. You are no longer moved by what dazzles the eyes. You are moved by what steadies the soul. And when you walk away from noise, you are not withdrawing. You are protecting power. This is the transition from seeker of experiences to guardian of atmosphere. And if this sign is active in you, understand something deeper is unfolding. Because when noise stops impressing you, warfare adjusts. Third sign, opposition increased the moment you found inner stability. You felt it. The moment you stopped wavering. The moment you stopped doubting. The moment you became steady. That is when the pressure intensified. Have you noticed that when you were confused, life felt chaotic but manageable? When you were unsure, warfare felt scattered. But the second you became grounded, the attacks sharpened. Not louder, smarter, more strategic. That was not coincidence. That was recognition. Darkness does not panic over potential. It reacts to alignment. And when your spirit locked into clarity, when your identity stopped shifting, with opinions, you became a threat. Warfare intensified because authority stabilized. Read that again in your spirit. You used to think resistance meant you were off path. You questioned yourself when doors closed. You wondered if you were being punished. But now you see it differently. Resistance is not a deterrent, it is confirmation. The enemy does not waste strategy on the ordinary. The enemy studies movement that carries destiny. And when your inner world became disciplined, when your emotions stopped ruling you, when your discernment sharpened, opposition adjusted, it became personal, calculated, targeted at your peace. Why? Because peace is power. A chaotic chosen one is delayed. A stable chosen one is dangerous. You stopped reacting impulsively. You stopped announcing every move. You stopped collapsing under pressure, and suddenly subtle attacks appeared. Distractions, misunderstandings, unexpected conflicts, strange fatigue. This was not random. It was response. You moved from seeker to stabilizer, from hungry to grounded, from searching to standing. And standing carries weight in the spirit realm. Not everyone will understand this. Some will say you are imagining warfare, but you feel the shift. You sense the timing. You know when pressure is external and when it is spiritual. And here is the revelation. The intensity you are facing is proportional to the authority you are carrying. Darkness does not escalate against weakness. It escalates against structure. And you have become structured, internally ordered, spiritually aligned. That alignment carries command. So the warfare sharpened. But notice something else. You did not collapse. You did not run. You did not return to confusion. You stood. And that standing is proof of transition. You are no longer rattled by every storm. You observe. You discern. You adjust strategically. That is not survival mode. That is leadership forming. Listen carefully. The enemy expected instability. He anticipated emotional reaction. But you responded with composure. And composure under pressure exposes growth. You are not being attacked because you are weak. You are being resisted because you are established. And established power cannot be ignored. This is deeper now, heavier, more serious. Because once you recognize warfare as confirmation, fear loses its grip. And when fear loosens, authority rises. Stand firm. Because if opposition intensified after your stability formed, what comes next will reveal just how much authority you truly carry. Fourth sign, you no longer pray for rescue, you command atmospheres. Feel the weight of that. There was a time you cried out just to survive. You asked to be delivered. You asked for protection. You asked for relief. And those prayers were real. They were necessary. They built you. But something shifted. You stopped praying like a victim. You started speaking like authority. Have you noticed the difference your words changed? Your posture changed. Even your silence changed. You no longer beg heaven to move on your behalf. You partner with heaven and declare what must shift. That is not arrogance. That is alignment. You walk into rooms now and sense the temperature of the spirit. Tension, confusion, hidden agendas. You feel it immediately. And instead of shrinking, instead of absorbing it, you stabilize it. Without announcement, without performance, just presence. Rooms change when you enter. Conversations soften, agendas scatter, darkness recalculates. Why? Because you are no longer surviving environments. You are governing them. This is deeper than positive thinking. This is spiritual jurisdiction. When you were a seeker, you asked, why is this atmosphere affecting me? Now you ask, why is this atmosphere not shifting? Do you see the transition? The world reacts to environments. The chosen reform them. The world is influenced by pressure. The chosen influence their pressure. And with that shift came new warfare. Because once you realize you carry governing energy, darkness stops trying to scare you. It tries to provoke you. It tries to disrupt your composure. It tries to pull you back into reaction. Why? Because reaction weakens authority. But you have learned restraint. You have learned stillness. You have learned that a whisper spoken with conviction carries more power than a shout filled with emotion. Your prayers now sound different, short, direct, unapologetic. You declare peace where there is chaos. You declare clarity where there is confusion. You declare exposure where there is manipulation. And something responds. Not because you are special in ego, but because you are aligned in identity. You feel responsible now, not burdened, responsible. When tension rises around you, you do not panic. You assess. When fear spreads, you ground yourself. When others spiral, you anchor. That is governing energy, and not everyone will understand it. Some will accuse you of being distant. Others will say you are detached. But what they mistake for distance is discipline. You refuse to be emotionally hijacked because you know your assignment is bigger than your feelings. Listen carefully. You were trained in survival so you could transition into authority. You were tested in chaos so you could stabilize it. You were ignored so you could learn to move without applause. Now you carry weight, and weight shifts atmospheres. Stand firm in that. Because if you have stopped praying for rescue and started commanding climates, the next revelation will expose just how set apart you truly are. Fifth sign, isolation stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like preparation. You remember when the loneliness hurt, when the invitation slowed down, when the phone stopped ringing, when people drifted without explanation. You questioned yourself. You wondered what you did wrong. You wondered why connection felt fragile. You wondered why you always seemed set apart. But now you see it differently. That isolation was not rejection. It was consecration. You were being pulled away from noise so your spirit could strengthen. You were being separated from dependency so your identity could solidify. You were being removed from constant validation so your confidence could root in something eternal. The world needs applause. The chosen need alignment. There is a difference. At first, the silence felt heavy. You felt unseen, misunderstood, even forgotten. But while you were alone, something was forming. Discernment sharpened. Emotional independence matured. Spiritual stamina increased. Loneliness became training ground. Have you noticed how you no longer crave constant affirmation? You no longer feel the need to explain yourself to everyone. You no longer shrink just to fit into rooms that were never built for you. Your circle shrank, but your clarity expanded. That is not loss. That is upgrade. Darkness tried to convince you that you were abandoned. It whispered that you were too much, too intense, too different, too deep. But what if you were simply too cold? Isolation was never meant to break you. It was meant to strip you of people-pleasing, strip you of fear of missing out, strip you of attachment to ordinary thinking. Because you cannot carry extraordinary authority while clinging to ordinary approval. Listen carefully. You were being trained to stand alone without feeling alone. That is power. You were being trained to hear clearly without interference. That is power. You were being trained to move without consensus. That is power. Separation became strategy. The enemy thought isolation would weaken you. Instead, it concentrated you. It refined you. It made your presence heavier. Now when you enter rooms, you do not look for belonging. You carry it. You do not beg to be understood. You stand understood within yourself. That is the pivot. You are not just surviving spiritual warfare. You are becoming too grounded to manipulate, too centered to control, too aware to distract. Isolation did not shrink you. It expanded your authority, and not everyone will recognize this shift. Some will still see distance, but what they call distance is depth. What they call detachment is discipline. You are no longer afraid of being set apart. You expect it, because you now understand that separation is often the final stage before elevation. Stand in that awareness. Because if isolation prepared you instead of punishing you, the next revelation will show you how your discernment has evolved beyond emotion. Sixth sign, you can see through people without hating them. That is not normal. That is maturity. There was a time when betrayal made you bitter, when manipulation made you reactive, when deception felt personal and you carried it like a wound. But now you see clearly, and you remain composed. Have you noticed that shift? You detect motives quickly. You sense inconsistencies in tone. You feel when words and energy do not match. The mask does not fool you. The performance does not distract you. You see it immediately. But you do not explode. You do not spiral. You do not become what hurt you. That is power. Discernment sharpened. Bitterness dissolved. That combination is rare. The world either stays naive or becomes cynical, either blind or hardened. But you became aware without becoming cold. You understand shadows without turning into one. That is authority maturing. Darkness expected your wounds to twist you. It expected rejection to make you defensive. It expected betrayal to make you suspicious of everyone. But instead, your pain refined you. You learned patterns, you studied behavior, you recognized spiritual tactics behind human faces, and instead of reacting emotionally, you responded strategically. You no longer chase validation from those who cannot see you. You no longer argue with manipulation. You simply adjust your access. You shift your distance. You move with quiet precision. That restraint is not weakness. It is control. Have you realized how calm you remain now in situations that would have once triggered you? How steady your voice stays when someone tries to provoke you? How detached you can become without disconnecting from compassion? That is not apathy. That is composure under authority. The enemy prefers emotional hooks. He wants you offended. He wants you distracted. He wants you drained by unnecessary conflict. But you stop feeding that cycle. You observe, you discern, you decide, and you move accordingly. This is the mark of a divine powerhouse. Not loud reaction, measured response, not emotional volatility, grounded clarity. You can sit across from someone and sense their insecurity, their manipulation, even their envy, and still choose peace. Not because you are unaware, but because you are unthreatened. Your identity is anchored. An anchored identity does not need to prove itself. Listen carefully. Seeing through people without hatred means your wounds no longer control you. It means your discernment is led by wisdom, not trauma. It means you are spiritually protected because you are emotionally disciplined. That discipline makes you dangerous to darkness, because you cannot be easily baited. You cannot be easily fooled. You cannot be easily shaken. And when authority matures into composure, the atmosphere shifts again. This is deeper now, because clarity without hatred is the foundation of leadership. And if you have reached this level of composure, the next revelation will expose how your words themselves have begun to carry weight. Seventh sign, Your words now carry weight even when whispered. You felt that shift. Conversations change when you speak. Energy shifts when you enter dialogue. Silence follows certain sentences you release, and it startled you at first. You were used to being overlooked, talked over, misunderstood. There was a season when your voice felt small, when people dismissed your insight, when your truth seemed inconvenient. But that season trained you. It taught you restraint. It taught you timing. It taught you precision. Now when you speak, you do not ramble. You do not chase approval. You do not over-explain. You release truth like a measured strike, and it lands. Have you noticed how some people lean in when you talk? How others grow uncomfortable? How certain individuals suddenly avoid eye contact? That is not imagination. That is authority surfacing. Light exposes. It does not apologize. Some are drawn because your words confirm what their spirit already knew. Others are exposed because your clarity disrupts their masks. Both reactions are proof. Your voice is no longer noise. It is decree. There was a time when you spoke emotionally, reactively, trying to defend yourself, trying to prove yourself. But now your speech is anchored, calm, grounded. That composure makes it heavier. Darkness prefers impulsive speech. It thrives on careless words. But you learn to guard your mouth. You learn that silence can be strength. You learn that timing matters more than volume. So when you speak now, it carries intention. And intention carries power. Have you noticed that certain truths you release seem to linger in the air? That even after you stop talking, the atmosphere remains charged? That people replay your words long after the conversation ends? That is not charisma. That is spiritual weight. You are marked. The enemy once tried to silence you through insecurity, through rejection, through ridicule. He hoped you would shrink. He hoped you would doubt your perception. But instead, you refined it. Now you do not need to raise your voice to be heard. You do not need to dominate conversations to influence them. You simply speak from alignment. And alignment amplifies. The world shouts to be noticed. The chosen whisper and still shake foundations. The world debates for dominance. The chosen declare from conviction. Your voice carries frequency now, not emotional frequency, authority frequency. You can feel it. That is why you have become careful with your words. You understand they create impact. They reveal truth. They disrupt darkness. They awaken light. And when you fully realize that your speech shifts atmospheres, you stop speaking casually. You speak intentionally. Stand in that awareness. Because if your whisper now carries decree, the next sign will reveal how your very presence has become guarded by fire. Eighth sign, you feel a protective fire around your destiny. Not fear, fire. There is a seriousness in you now, a vigilance, a quiet intensity that was not there before. You move differently, you decide differently, you allow differently. Have you noticed that you no longer give everyone access? You no longer entertain every invitation. You no longer explain every boundary. You guard your time. You guard your energy. You guard your focus. And you do it without apology. That is not arrogance. That is awareness. There is something sacred about your assignment now. You feel it, almost like heat around your future, like an invisible perimeter that warns you when something is off. Old temptations feel small, not because they disappeared, but because you outgrew them. What once distracted you now bores you. What once pulled at your ego now feels beneath your calling. You see the trap before it forms. You sense the cost before compromise even begins. That is fire. The world moves casually. The chosen move cautiously. The world gambles with time. The chosen treat time like treasure. The world experiments with access. The chosen protect their gates. You feel watched, not in paranoia, in awareness. You know heaven observes alignment. You know opposition monitors movement, and that knowledge does not scare you. It sharpens you. You move like someone entrusted with something rare. Because you are. You speak like someone aware of consequences. Because you are. You choose like someone who understands that destiny can be delayed by distraction, so you refuse distraction. Listen carefully. The enemy once approached you boldly. Now he studies you from a distance. He tests subtly. He looks for cracks. because direct confrontation no longer works on you. You are too grounded, too aware, too disciplined. That protective fire is not emotion. It is spiritual instinct. It alerts you when a conversation carries hidden agenda. It warns you when a decision smells like compromise. It pulls you back when something looks good but feels wrong. You trust it now. Before you ignored those nudges, you second-guessed yourself. You worried about being too much. But now you understand that sensitivity is strategy. You are not paranoid. You are positioned, and that fire makes you untouchable by ordinary forces. Not because you are immune to pressure, but because you recognize it early. You move like someone who knows their steps are counted, because they are. The isolation trained you. The warfare strengthened you. The authority matured you, and now this fire protects you. You are no longer wandering through life. You are advancing with awareness. Stand in that fire, because if you can feel protection tightening around your destiny, then the final revelation will expose just how powerful you have truly become. Ninth sign, you realize you are no longer becoming powerful. You are the power in the room. This is the shift. This is the ceiling. There was a time you asked quietly, "Am I really chosen?" You searched for confirmation. You looked for signs. You waited for validation. But something irreversible happened. You stopped asking. You started walking like you know. Not loud, not arrogant, certain. Have you felt that certainty settle into your bones? That unshakable awareness that you do not need to prove anything anymore? That you do not need to announce your strength because your presence already carries it? You enter rooms now and something adjusts. Conversations recalibrate. Energies reorganize. Darkness becomes cautious. You do not try to dominate. You simply exist. And existence alone disrupts what is not aligned. That is not ego. That is embodiment. You are no longer studying power. You are operating in it. Fear used to whisper before decisions. What if you fail? What if they reject you? What if you are wrong? But now responsibility speaks louder. You do not move based on fear. You move based on assignment. That is the difference between a seeker and a powerhouse. A seeker asks for permission. A powerhouse carries commission. You understand now that your presence is not accidental. You understand that the warfare was not random. You understand that the isolation, the rejection, the misunderstanding, all of it was training for this level of authority. Darkness tried to intimidate you early because it saw this version of you coming, and now you are here. Your presence disrupts without announcement. Your silence carries weight. Your decisions create ripple effects. You are spiritually untouchable by ordinary forces because you no longer operate at an ordinary frequency. But hear this clearly. The greatest danger now is not failure. It is forgetting. Forgetting how much authority you carry. Forgetting that you are backed by heaven. Forgetting that what you survived was preparation, not punishment. Do not shrink now. Do not doubt now. Stand fully in what you have become. You are not evolving into power. You are walking in it. And that realization seals it. You are chosen, not because it sounds good, but because your life proves it. You were tested, you were refined, you were opposed, and you are still standing, protected, marked, assigned. Everything that tried to break you built you. Everything that tried to silence you strengthened you. Everything that tried to isolate you elevated you. You are not ordinary. You never were. Type 9 in the comments if you feel this confirmation in your spirit. Declare it. Anchor it. Let darkness know you are aware now. Subscribe if you are ready to keep walking at this level. Because this is not the end of awakening. This is the beginning of dominion. You were never random. You were never overlooked. You were chosen. And what is chosen by heaven cannot be undone by darkness.